Hello, this is the voice of Stewart Pearce, and welcome to my series of deep dialogues. These are vital conversations I engage in with global soul stewards from all over the planet, providing us with vital understandings about how we can create a new hierarchy of values to help us evolve into a brave new world. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening.
And I know you're all of you, whether you're watching this live or in recording, are going to marvel in the wonderful lady that we have sitting in front of us, who is really a consummate practitioner in her particular field of expertise. So welcome everybody, welcome ELENA, and welcome all of you. And of course, we both say to you, namaste, namaste, namaste. So let me share with you who this wonderful lady who's sitting here is in terms of her bio. So ELENA is the founder of the Holistic Quantum Healer Institute and a #1 Amazon bestseller in the subject of holistic medicine. At the same time, she's a pioneer in the field of functional, regenerative, and quantum medicine. ELENA's journey began 25 years ago as a clinical pharmacist, yet she then became certified in functional, regenerative, anti-aging, and quantum medicine, helping thousands of people around the globe to find inner peace, vibrant wholeness, and profound healing as they reclaimed their energy via proven natural programs. Together with her wonderful partner, her life partner, Alejandro, they have created a groundbreaking vibrational frequency system which analyzes the quantum field using scalar wave technology, and which has currently read the energy systems of thousands of people around the globe, at the same time helping to raise the consciousness of humanity. And we'll make sure that you have ELENA's website. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's wonderful to be with you again.
Oh, it's so wonderful to be here with you, Stewart. What an honor.
Oh, it's an honor for us all to be in your presence, because you're such a wonderful embodiment of all that you're teaching. The transition, because you am I right in saying you trained and were certified as a clinical pharmacist, and then a remarkable transition took place. Is that true?
Yes, I will say it's probably more of a remembrance that happened. Yes.
Can you share with us what that was?
Yes, I think I want to go back to when I was a child, a little girl growing up in Kiev, Ukraine. I'm from Kiev, Ukraine. And I remember as a child walking by old world pharmacies,
Mm.
always mesmerized by what I used to imagine was the magic potions that they were making. And I just thought this is what I want to do when I grow up. And of course, reality hit. Moving to United States, I decided to follow that path. My great grandmother was actually one of the first pharmacists during the Tsar period in Russia. She became a pharmacist in 1914. So I imagined it was going to be a world of magic. But as a child, I was also extremely intuitive. If I asked my father, what was I like as a child? And he would say, when I was 2 years old, he would come from work. He knew I was reading him because I was looking into his eyes and asking questions about how he was feeling as a 2-year-old.
Mm.
But somehow along the way, life has happened. I went to pharmacy school, and then I quickly realized that it was not a world of magical potions, that it was a world of over medicating people. And I speak on that, even though I'm still licensed as a clinical pharmacist, because it gives me a way that I can still practice medicine. I can still talk to people about medicine without having to work in the pharmacy. In 2007, I had a massive awakening. And I don't know astrologically, maybe astrologically something happened at that time as well. But I remember I had 4 children at that time. I was a young mom. And one of my friends asked me if I wanted to attend a functional medicine module. And I said, oh, I'm not interested in going back to school. I have 4 kids. There's just no way. She said, well, you don't have to sign up for a couple of years. You can just see this one module. If it resonates with you, then perhaps this is going to change your life. So I said, okay. So I flew in to attend this module. And it was one of the cardiologists. His name was Dr. Sinatra. He was in his 70s. And he had us all get up and do Qigong. And I remember looking at my friend. It was a room of over 300 medical providers, mostly physicians. And I looked at her and I said, do you feel what I'm feeling between my hands? And she looked at me. She's like, not really. I said, how could you not feel this energy flowing? And for me, it was like a light bulb was turned on and everything just kind of began to flow to where I became so hungry for this information. So as soon as we got back, we started practicing Qigong every Friday. And at that time, I also went to work in a compounding pharmacy. And this is where we custom made medications. So this was a massive change in my life because instead of perceiving the world for many years, which I have as a very linear world, and by nature, I'm not, because I'm also Pisces. So I'm a very flowy person, but I've just became indoctrinated by the system. I quickly began to integrate and question everything. So going into the compounding world, I started to study Ayurvedic medicine. And then I began to see patients in my private clinic. So I opened up a private clinic at the same time in the compounding pharmacy. And I began to see discrepancies between what the lab testing was showing and how the people were feeling. And I allowed for the feeling aspect to guide me into what was it, or what was the root of their imbalance or their chronic conditions. And just going back a little bit, I also worked in a diabetes clinic. And diabetes clinic, most people on the average were taking 17 medications a day. And it was fascinating to me when I would ask them, has anyone talked to you about lifestyle and dietary changes? And most of them said, my doctor said it's not related or it's not connected. So there were so many discrepancies that started to happen that I had to make a big shift. And initially I shifted completely into energy medicine. And I began to push away the medical background that I had. But it wasn't until I realized that actually understanding the physical body and understanding the energy body is where the future of medicine is headed. And this is where I began to bridge the two and therefore created the Holistic Quantum Healer School training for providers. Yes.
But this is a beautiful story because, again, going back to the principle of embodiment, you're referring to the experiential nature of the way that you were carried, that your soul carried you into these very remarkable revelations that have led you to the position where you are now, which, of course, as we both know, is an ongoing, growing, evolving, beautiful substance, which sometimes brings challenges, but then we recognize that the universe is merely saying, you're going in the wrong direction, go in this direction, and automatically something begins to happen. So we're really seeing the interface. This is what is triggering within me. We're seeing the interface, a very profound interface between biology and biography, and how often contemporary medicine, allopathic medicine, doesn't actually allow us to see a way into the unique conversation or the unique interface between biology and biography. During that time, you were just illustrating for us the way that you were actually able to see that the analysis that people were undergoing. Incidentally, was this in the United States or was it still in Ukraine?
United States.
Yeah, because you've been in the United States for a long time.
Yes, since 1989.
1989, right. But do you still have family in Ukraine?
I do. I have some distant relatives who are there. Yes.
In this moment, we send love and light to them, bearing in mind what's taking place there. I don't think we've talked about Ukraine. I was actually in Ukraine at the end of last year for the UN, running a workshop, and actually met met President Zelensky. Anyway, that's going off piste. It's another conversation. So this is all in the US. So when you were aware of the analyses and how the analysis was anomalous to the way that the person was actually experiencing whatever they were experiencing, you know, the effects on their constitution, what were the most outstanding points of difference or in, you know, the recognition of an anomaly?
Well, the most interesting cases were the ones that were coming in and they had mystery symptoms. So based on the lab work, the lab would not show where these symptoms were coming from. So for me, it began as a process of, in a way of being a Sherlock Holmes, you could say, of investigation in the unseen realms. And this is what allowed me also to begin to question things, but also start to trust myself. Because when we are trained in a very linear way, regardless of what education system we've received, it sort of disconnects us from our most powerful way, which is our innate ability to intuit. So for me, all the gifts of seeing, feeling, sensing began to open up. And initially, it was a process that was kind of frightening because I didn't have anyone near me that could support that process. I remember going to my friends and saying, "Do you see this? Do you feel this?" And they were like, "No, no." So I began to be an outsider in my own environment. And that meant that I had to trust the process so much to where everything began to fall apart. And that could be a very scary process, of course, but somehow I felt that my inner light, whatever my soul was guiding me, was so much more powerful than the fear of unknown, of what does it mean for my career. And I remember telling my parents that I'm leaving the world of pharmacy and I'm going into the world of quantum and energy medicine. And they said, "What is that? Do you even make money doing that? And what do you mean you're going to give up all your education and your salary to do what?" And I said, "I just have to do this. This is who I am." And that was the process of embodying the innate, intuitive essence that we all have and trusting that it's going to lead me into a place of where I'm meant to be of service to other people.
Fantastic. This is beautiful and very in coherence with what my journey has been as well. You know, when I faced, what is it, 12, 13 years ago, when I faced a very radical initiation, which I knew was a psychic initiation into spirit, I really needed to walk into the fire professionally. And a number of things were happening that were beginning to determine that I could no longer serve in the capacity, which was a very illustrious capacity, but I could no longer serve. And so I just handed in my resignation and walked out saying, "Okay, now angels, open my wings and allow me to fly and trust in the universe." So this vital substance of what you're sharing with is about the trust impulse, belief, faith, and trust to carry us, recognizing that the universe is completely self-organizing and self-correcting and will always carry us if we're in flow. But if we're not in flow, then forgive me, but the shit hits the fan. This is wonderful. And then, and of course, you know, the increments from that point of discovery have been really consequential, haven't they, in terms of all that you've developed, again, through this beautiful journey of experience after experience after experience. And of course, I'm sure that your parents, if they're still with us, have recognized that all of your early education was an extraordinary platform to be able to move into all that you've developed from an intuitive. Where do we go from there? Because that's an extraordinary story for us all. What was one of the greatest intuitive flashes that you had?
Yes, I just wanted to share. I actually have never publicly shared what I'm about to share, and it's a very beautiful story. So in my older home, I had about 80 rose bushes. And I had this one woman that came for a session with me. And this was in the earlier stages of, do I trust? Do I not trust? I'm seeing. What am I seeing? Is it really what I'm seeing? So this woman came, and the way that I used to work, I would never ask questions because I didn't want the medical answers to influence what was coming through for the person. So it was actually medical intuitive work combination later with, of course, energy work and then different recommendations. So I remember her laying on the table, and this was the most extraordinary thing that happened. As I always close my eyes, and as I'm holding her feet, okay, her eyes are closed, I am seeing her female organ system kind of floating above her, and one of her fallopian tubes actually being completely blocked. And as I'm holding, I'm seeing a being showing up. And it really surprised me. And there was a baby above. And this being, I said, "Who are you?" And he said to me, "I am Yeshua." And I remember just having chills all over my body. And he looked at me and he said, "Trust. You have to trust." So when she opened her eyes, I said, "What did you feel?" And she said, "I felt extreme pressure in my abdominal area." I said, "May I ask you a question? Have you ever had blockages in your fallopian tube?" And I described, I believe it was the left side. And she said, "Oh, yes. For 2 years, I've been going to different clinics, different doctors, and they said that this was the issue and the reason why I couldn't get pregnant." So for me, it was one of the most profound confirmation and messages from the unseen world to really trust and to let go of my analytical mind, which we all love to use so much, which I do think comes in handy, but to allow the intuitive aspect to be the driving force of what is needed for the person that is there in front of me. So I will say that was, oh, and she said to me that she moved from California, and the psychic told her that she's going to come, and a woman with rose bushes in front of her house is going to work on you and help you. So this was just confirmation after confirmation. And I just thought it was such a beautiful and profound and life-changing experience for me in the work that I'm doing today.
That's beautiful. Can you tell us, how does it feel? Because after all, for many years, you had developed this compass of the intellect.
Yes.
And then suddenly this burgeoning, re-burgeoning quality of experience that you were fully aware of as a child. So as you move into the mature aspect of your expertise today, when you're reading somebody, or forgive me, whatever phrase that you use, because you're really describing the nature of your medical intuitiveness, what is the experience of recognizing the intuition working? How does it feel?
Well, there's so many layers. Number one, there is a system now of how I do it. So that system has to be in place. For example, checking all the organ systems, and this is how I teach people. So there is a logical way to do it. And then there is a very intuitive aspect. How does it feel? It feels like I'm living the magic that I've always imagined as a child. And this is what I love doing. So there's a medical aspect, intuitive aspect, and then there is a whole other layer now of what Alejandro and I do together as well, which was birthed out of questioning the nature of our reality. And actually, I'm sure you want to talk about the scalar waves. This kind of happened to us. It wasn't something that we were seeking for. And I'll share this. Years ago, there was a man that came to teach us using this very specific scalar wave device for medical purposes. And I began to use it also to read people long distance. There's several different ways of reading people long distance. And I couldn't understand why certain people would have viruses come back. And we can talk about, for example, Epstein-Barr, which is a chronic fatigue virus. Why is it that some people, after medically being treated, or let's say their diet would change, it would be addressed why it would come back a year or two later. And what we've discovered is, actually, it was quite revolutionary for us and for my work, is every single event and situation gets embedded in our morphogenetic field or the biofield in the form of emotion. It gets coded there. So our history, going back into the childhood for this particular woman, we recognized that her virus was embedded with an emotion to an event that occurred when she was 2 years old. And until she cleared that event, she couldn't get rid of this virus. It was always coming back whenever she was triggered or stressed. So that was a huge aha moment. That meant that we can actually go into somebody's history, into the time-space continuum, and look at events and situations. And that changed the nature and the course of what I do now, because now I understand that events and situations can never be erased. We can go back to the moment of incarnation, the moment the soul decides to enter this reality. We can actually measure at what frequency it makes a decision to enter. What happens when the soul is in utero? Because we're able to measure emotions, events and situations that the mother experiences that gets imprinted onto the baby inside the womb. So it's also a huge realization of preconception medicine, right? And how our ancestral patterns also play out, and the things that we inherit prior to our birth. And then we're able to track a person's lifetime and see where they have had their vibrational frequencies dropped, what were the events and situations that contributed, and who were the people that contributed to those events. Because our biology doesn't have to be dictated by something that happened in our lifetime when we weren't conscious about it. So we can actually rewrite our response to whatever that was that happened in our life in order to change how we biologically age and what happens to us. And all the chronic conditions could be prevented based on the information when we were younger.
Yeah. This is wonderful, wonderful. And so it really balances out the theory that we've had expostulated from the allopathic medicinal community for years and years and years and years, that dis-ease is genetic, and that, you know, it may be part of gene phenomenon, but actually the root can be identified and then completely transmuted. I hope you're all hearing this, everybody, those people who are listening in, who maybe are listening in with something that is not happening within your body, within your physiology, in harmony with self, that you are in disharmony, that you are, what in my terms, not in flow. This is extraordinary, ELENA, absolutely extraordinary. So there's great complementarity between what you do and what I do. It's just that as I was saying with you earlier on, my expertise is in a slightly different aspect. It's not based in the wonder of science in the way that you have been able to acquire this acute awareness. And you know, I'm finding it more and more and more clear to read people. It's something I've been doing for nearly 40 or 45 years. But at the same time, from a professional point of view, but from the same time, you know, what I also am noticing is that people have a density of chaos within the immediate field that obviously is a vibrational force that's pouring out from the inner substance. And that sometimes there's so much static in the field during the consultation, it's very difficult to get to the point of clarity that I know potentially I can, to the point, and I know that you'll share this, where we often read someone's soul so implicitly, and yet they're not reading their soul at all. I feel that you've actually gone a stage further because of being able to really determine the quantum nature of field, and particularly through the scalar wave technology. So I'd love for you to share with us what that is.
Yes. So we took the instruments that we learned for medical purposes. And then Alejandra and I said, well, if we can read a person's entire life through the language of numbers, which are linked to frequencies that are expressed in emotions, right? Perhaps we can look at the different vibrational frequencies that we omit. And we created a system which has evolved. So it is an evolving process. So it is numbers, and it's broken down into 4 major categories. Category 1 is frequencies of 0 to 199, which has to do with victimization mindset, where life is happening to you, not for you. Stage 2 is activation from 200 to 499. And this is where you become an active participant and you recognize, wow, I am connected to everything around me. Stage 3 is a stage of inspiration. This is where you are in the state of awe. And through that state, you inspire yourself, and as a result of it, you inspire others. And stage 4 is a stage of illumination. And this is the stage of 700 to 999. And then there's that one last stage, the stage of 1000, which we call the divine spark, the divine essence. It's that golden, pure golden light, the light of avatars, you can say, which exists in every human being. And through using this technology, it takes two of us to do it at the same time. We've learned so many remarkable lessons about nature of our reality, that there is no right or wrong way of being. Every human being signs up for a very specific role to play in this reality. And we always say that every frequency matters, because there are those people that, what we call them, are the great awakeners, that are playing the role, the hard roles in the shadows, to help the light rise. So it is definitely not a comparison journey, because we all have our own unique ways of expressing ourselves. But for people that incarnate into the light, which means frequencies of 200 and above, when we do have challenging events and situations that happen in our life and we drop into the shadows, when we feel that resistance, that big pull, that there's something greater, this is really the transformation and the hero's journey that every human being is walking through. And what I love, actually, Stewart, that you talk about, of course, I've read your book, we've talked about it before, is the dissonance in the voice, because you can hear it so clearly. When the person is out of alignment of their own unique vibrational signature, this is something that we can hear right away. And this is the work that I actually appreciate so much that you share and do, because some of us are not able, to navigate through, what is this frequency? What is that frequency? Which eventually, I believe, we are all our own devices, and we'll be able to read frequencies without any device. And this is where I believe we're headed. But for now, we can hear it in a person's tone and how they dress it up. And that is really the beauty of what you're sharing with your work. But yes, the field has many ways of capturing that information, whether it's through the sound, like you hear it, or through vibrational frequencies, the way that we read it in a person's field.
Yes. And again, for our listeners, all who are observing, I'm fascinated by the accuracy of the way you balance the clarity of thought with the dexterity of feeling.
Yes.
And in my experience, this is quite rare, that you have this wonderful balance. And I feel that we can all feel the pulsations of light that arise from you, that how harmonious they are, how balanced they are, how grounded they are, how earthed they are, how holistically whole they are. And as a result, there are these wonderful textures of delight, of excitement, of freedom, of joy, and of passionate love for what you're doing. It's pretty obvious to feel these. And of course, going back to what we were saying earlier, there's so much cognitive and neurological dissonance that it's very difficult to actually feel the essence of the quantum field within the individual because of the static that's there. As you process all of this, I know that you're feeling it very deeply within your body. And I wonder, from a kinesthetic point of view, what's actually happening as you feel, for example, when somebody comes into your practice and they're in a dire straits, you know, they're experiencing major physiological breakdown, possibly on the brink of diagnosed cancer, stage 4 cancer, but they're also emotionally fractured. How does it feel?
You know, I'll say it's been a gift to navigate the service of being there for another human being. For me, it's the most humbling experience. I always treat every person that comes into my practice, especially in person, as a divine being, regardless of where they're at, what they have experienced in their life. So for me, it's seeing another as divine. And therefore, I work with them. I actually say it is not me doing the work. So I allow for the divine to flow through. And yes, there is a logical aspect, which is getting to the grounded aspects of giving the right information that is very much needed as a protocol. And then there's an energy aspect. And oftentimes when the person is crying, I'm crying right there with them. I feel it all. And I have immense amount of love for people that come to see me. So yes, I always say they're an extension of me, and they are my soul family. People that seek me out are my soul family.
This is so exquisite. And I'm sure that every single person listening in these moments we share together, or in future tense with the recording, that everybody is saying, I must go to ELENA, I must go to ELENA. When anything is dissonant within me, I know that she will see me fully, will hold me in a space of belief, faith, and trust. And as a result, I know that the loving communion between us is going to provide her with the beautiful brilliance of her expertise that will see right into me to discover exactly where the healing needs to take place. And what I mean by that really is the movement back to wholeness, that healing is a movement back to wholeness. Yeah, aren't you all feeling this, everybody? There's some wonderful things being written in the comment box. I don't know if you can actually see it. Everything is exactly what I was just thinking. Oh, beautiful. That's wonderful. So people are just, really relating to what we're saying. Deborah, it's so hard. Who is Deborah? So hard for someone like me to stop the brain from repeating. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, as we journey forward, please, I'm sure that ELENA will receive your questions. So please, if you can formulate questions, but don't write essays. Just be very concise about your questions. There's a wonderful person called Harmony. I love all of your nom de plumes. So we can't see who you really are, but obviously somebody who's really preoccupied with harmony. I can hear my voice is flat. I want to find my tone. Well, you've come to the right place. Not only does ELENA actually find the specific frequencies, the multidimensional frequencies of the whole of your physiology and the way that your physiology moves through the morphogenetic field, which I'd love you to talk more about in a second, if you would.
Yes.
But also, hey, I tune people into their note. So come and have a session. So maybe we should expostulate and explain what the morphogenetic field means.
Yes, so we all have, I would say it's much more than our aura. It is much more than our etheric body. It's a collection of absolutely everything that exists and ever existed. So every human being, every being actually has their own, what is now called, it's a science of biofield. And our unique biofields connect to the human collective biofield. And that also interacts with everything else, not only on our planet, but also in the universe. So it's extremely important to have hygiene of your own energy. How do your thoughts begin to befriend your thoughts, your daily patterns, what you eat, what you think, how you interact with other people? It all matters. So looking into vibrational frequencies is going back that we said we can measure incarnation and birth. Now we've extrapolated it into 36 different categories. So we can look and see, how do you relate to other people? How do you view health? Again, your body, mind, and soul connection. Finances. How do you view personal growth? What is important for you? Creativity. I think creativity is key. People always say, how do you raise your vibrational frequency? For me, creativity is key. And it's fascinating because I think for most people, what I find, and I found it for myself as well, we don't see ourselves as creative, but actually we all are. We're co-creating and creating our own reality. And I always say that take yourself back to maybe when you were 4 years old, play, because what is creativity? It's all about being inspired. And when you feel inspired, how do you take action? So I always tell people to go back into their childhood and take your 4-year-old on a walk and look at the world outside as if you're seeing it for the first time. And it's such a great and easy exercise to do. I actually still do this with my almost 20-year-old son. When we go walking our dogs, this is what we do. We just look at everything from a state of wonder. And that is one of the most profound ways to shift our vibration, to shift our thoughts, by seeing beauty in everything around us. Because that beauty is a reflection of everything within us. So whether you look at flowers, at the tree, at the sky, at the birds, whatever, looking at another human being and recognize that that is beautiful. So creativity, we look into intuition and 4 different aspects of intuition: clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, and claircognizance. And again, these frequencies are emotions. So we're not measuring how intuitive somebody is or how intuitive you are, but what filter gets activated when you receive information. Is it a filter of fear? For example, we had somebody who is a psychic, and she booked her vibrational frequency analysis, and she had 100 frequency in her intuition. And at first she was really surprised. She's like, well, this is what I do for a living. And then she attended my live event, and she came up to me months later and she said, I finally understood what you meant. I said, please share. She said, well, when I work with people, I don't filter it through the worry and fear. But when I'm at home, which is most of the time I'm interacting with my loved ones, the first thought that comes through is the worry and the fear. And this is what I'm projecting out intuitively. And I thought, oh, this is great. It's wonderful to be honest and self-reflective. Then we look at philanthropy, because the way that we share is a direct relationship to how we're sharing with ourselves. Everything is a mirror. We're all each other's mirrors. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you're actually seeing the other person in your life, right? And then we look to see in percentages, how much do you enjoy playing your role in this reality? That's pretty important, right? How much are you in the present moment? How much does your ego play into your experience? And ego is always part of the experience, but how much of it do you entertain? Which ego is information. So how much do you rely on the information that you've acquired, or do you surrender and allow for the divine to also flow through you? And it's always a dance, right? Then we look into self-awareness, how aware you are of your outer and inner world, your alignment with divine purpose. And people tell us actually that that is the most important number for them. Why? Because it's not so much the role that you play, but you want to make sure that you're on the right path, at least for most people, right? So people want to know. So alignment with divine purpose is very much related to your soul's journey, and alignment with personal purpose is more related to the ego fulfillment,
Mm. Mm.
right? And then we look at how compassionate, empathic, energy purity, which has to do with how much do you embody your overall frequency. So it doesn't mean like, I'm more pure or less pure, but oftentimes it can give you an insight if there's interferences in your field as well. And then most people wanted us to check how much they embody the fifth dimension, so we'll be able to also, we're measuring how much they experience the 5D, whether it's in a sleep state or wake cycles as well.
This is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. You give me so many ideas. This is absolutely tangible. And so, I'm prompted to share, I believe fundamentally that feeling is the language of the soul, and that we're being drawn into the real. If there is a center within quanta, I believe it's actually to do with flow, but where the flowing center may be, the superintelligence that we refer to as being the Mother, Father, God, the source intelligence, that we are being prompted to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And one of my great concerns as I journey forward is that we're losing a feeling literacy, that we're losing a way of being able to talk about the way that we feel, not just from a physiological point of view, but from a deep, deep, deep emotional point of view. And we're no longer reading poetry. I've just come back from California, where I was for 2 weeks working. And again, I was aware of the level of dissonance in everybody's voices, and that everybody's moving so fast. I met hundreds of people because I was doing major presentations in 3 major cities. And most of the people that I met, I had to say several times, "What is your name?" Because they would, "Hi, my name is..." In other words, we're losing a sense of noun. And as we lose a sense of noun, we're losing a sense of naming, of truly identifying. We're moving so fast that if there's not immediate cognitive recognition, we don't go deep into the kinesthesia of our bodies to feel, well, how does this feel to me? Do I feel comfortable here? Anyway, so I'm absolutely fascinated by it. And I would love to return to this question that somebody brought up in a moment ago. Let me just, oh yeah, it's that wonderful question about being an empath and working with troubled souls, being deeply emotional in empathy. This is what Deborah is sharing. I don't know if can you see this on the screen? I'm looking at the comment box. There are 2 private chat. If you click on comments, you'll see them.
Yes, I do
It can
see.
be deeply emotional. It can be deeply emotional being an empath when working with troubled souls. You are an empath. It's obvious through what you've shared with us. And my firm belief is that we've begun the revolution of the empaths, that we empaths are waking up. But many of us have conceived our empathy as a dysfunction, as a weakening, as an enfeebling, rather than as a superpower. Would you agree with me?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't want to lose another, I will answer this question, but I wanted to actually say something that is so profound about poetry, because we have to talk about it just briefly.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a very important exercise actually for people. So in my class, I teach people how to balance the thymus gland. So the thymus gland is very much related to your immune system. And when somebody next to you has a weak thymus gland, they actually drain your energy. And we've done all kinds of exercises to test, like you can look at a photograph, and if they have a weak thymus gland, most likely your body will go weak. Mm-hmm. One of the greatest ways to balance the thymus gland is to read poetry. So in my class, I actually tell people, we have a couple of poems, and I have people recite poetry to balance the thymus, but I would say it also balances and puts you in a state of coherence. It helps synchronize the left and the right brain. And I'm so glad that you brought this up, because we rarely talk about poetry, I think, nowadays. So Stewart, there you go. So this is a great point for most people to take home, is make it a point when you're in a state of chaos, first of all, breathe, and then read poetry.
This is stunning. And of course, what you're tuning into is the the level of frequency that I'm also tuning into, where we have been indoctrinated, educated, socialized into placing it all here. I wandered through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames doth flow. And what you're talking about is drawing it into the heart. I
Yeah.
wandered through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames doth flow. And one begins to feel something extraordinary. That's actually, they're 3 lines from a William Blake poem. Who was the grandfather of Romanticism at the time when the Industrial Revolution was beginning to take place, based on this island. So we're talking about the early part of the 1700s, and of course, or the middle part of the 1700s. What Blake was seeing were the Iron Maidens, the steam engines, shrieking across the landscape and destroying Mother Nature. And so he became completely preoccupied with the restoration of nature, and painted and wrote most of his poetry around that. That's just one poem. So one poet. Please, everybody, go back into the substance of how poetry will teach you to awaken the agency of feeling within your body, because feeling is the language of the soul. So we've dealt with morphogenetic field. I also, what's fascinating is that whenever you describe these things, you're always doing this. So
Oh,
we're that that you are completely orientated towards the thymus and towards the working of our hearts. And I don't know if have you discovered this extraordinary piece of information about the Shantae Ishtar.
No, please share.
Well, I won't go into it now. Everybody, if you want to read about it, it's just read about it in my book, The Heart's Note. But well, actually, I can't do that, can I? I have to talk about it. So within the North and the South of America, the Northern and Southern American indigenous people, there is a particular belief in the Shantae Ishtar, which is the single eye of the heart in translation. So the whole of their culture, the way that they foster their relationships, the way that they develop this unique complicity with Mother Nature and with the crawling creatures and the flying creatures and the swimming creatures, is all about the way that they feel the heart through the Shantae Ishtar working. And so I was fascinated by this because it's exactly what we're talking about in terms of the thymus. And I remember meeting, he will remain nameless, but a very eminent cardiologist who also was a cardiosurgeon. And so I remember I was at a reception or something, and we were, talking to one another. And I said, I have a question to ask you. In surgery, when you're going deep into restructuring cardiology, or if there is a major problem with aorta or ventricle, whatever the situation is there an area of the heart which you've observed that you never go near? And he said, how did you know that? It's something that is unspoken within my profession, but there is a ring of crystals that we never go to, because we know that if the scalpel or if the laser or the fiber optic touches it, there is a possibility that it will wither and die, and the person automatically will move into cardiac arrest. It's fascinating.
Yes.
He said, if you mention my name, I will always refute this, because he was this high eminent person within the field of allopathic medicine.
I should ask, actually, I have a friend, he's a cardiothoracic surgeon. I should ask him that question. That would be a good one.
That would be fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I didn't want to forget the lady who asked being an empath and working with people, because it's an important question. So through years of working with people one-on-one, and it's been many, many years, since 2007 now, I would say that it's a journey for you as a practitioner as well. And it's a journey of understanding your own boundaries and creating an environment to where the other person comes in and feels safe to be themselves, but they also know to respect your boundaries. So therefore your work, first of all, being an empath is not a disability. It's, as you said, it is a superpower, but also making sure that you are grounded. And being grounded is key in this work. You cannot be always imagining and escaping this reality. So again, taking care of your physical body, your emotional body, your mental clarity is key in helping other people.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And there begins a huge story. But if we can really staunch the ability that we've all developed unconsciously or consciously of moving into the neuroses of separation and seeing that, oh, that person is an empath, I am an empath, and oh my God, it's so painful, and move into the glory of diversity so that we're celebrating the uniqueness of life and the conviction of our own empathic status. I'm always in a good mood until I come into work and encounter problematic people. How or what can I do to stop letting them have so much effect on my energy? That's a
Mhm.
question from
That's
Ari.
great. So number one thing I'll say is usually the triggers in our life is a mirror reflection of every aspect that has not been healed within ourselves. So always ask, what am I being triggered? What is being triggered inside of me? And be honest with yourself, because there's a lot of insight. Usually what makes us mad is the part that needs attention within ourselves. So look at others as part of you. That's my advice.
Okay, you people listening in, you dear ones listening in, that's absolutely wonderful. And of course, it moves into the whole substance of thereby we awaken to the responsibility and the privilege of what it is to be empathic, that we may be actually through fields of resonance, that we are feeling more than other people are feeling. And therefore, we have an innate responsibility to assist in love and service. And of course, we've heard from ELENA that all of the time she's moving into an experience of the divine oneness of oneness. That, every person that comes, even if they're raging and sitting in front of you, even if they're raging silently and producing cancer cells within their body, there you are from what you've already said. And I utterly believe what you're sharing with us, that you see them as divine beings. And so your grace permeates the space of healing. It's a great talent that you have. Could you speak to the divine oneness of oneness?
What I really believe, and it's also based on frequencies, but ultimately there were fragmented aspects of a bigger soul. We come here to remember the wholeness and totality of who we are. And it is through the triggers, through different life situations that will bring us, if you're courageous enough, it will bring us closer to that divine oneness that we're all a part of.
Hey, everybody. Any other questions? Because we are nearing towards our end. Deborah says there is a benefit we experience when we oh, so you're revealing rather than questioning, as does music. Absolutely, because music is vibrational force. And the fascinating thing about the field of music is that when we go back into the classics, it's all based on the science of musicology. And so, for example, when we listen to Mozart's music, there is a book that was written by one of the Amadeus Quartet, who specialize obviously in Mozart's music. And it's called The Mozart Effect. And what we've actually deduced, this is going back 30 years ago, is the fact that the harmonics within Mozart's music, and obviously specific music, particularly the cantatas that he wrote at piano, has a direct effect on the correlation of the neurology of the spine. So it brings us back into harmony. Any other questions?
Somebody says, how do you have the mental clarity and not be drawn to different things pulling us in different ways?
Yeah,
Great
well,
question.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll say, it's been a great exercise in the last 3 years, especially, to not be lost in all the rabbit holes and all the narratives. And I will say that it's important to become an observer of everything that exists, including your own responses. and keeping the center line, because as soon as you attach to one narrative or the other, you're losing it. So for me, it's really always about being in the center and being an observer versus being too emotionally attached to one side or the other.
This is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And of course, Vaidi and Charu's, they're the hummingbirds. So, you know, are you looking at hummingbirds and see the way that they hold the still center when their little wings are fluttering? I've had many extraordinary experiences with hummingbirds where they've appeared to me as teachers when I've been I'm thinking of an emotional crisis that I was in about 6 or 7 years ago in New Mexico on the mesa. And in the middle of the night, at 2 o'clock in the morning, in the pitch black, a hummingbird, I walked out of the adobe. There was nobody there, so I was just walked out naked to stand under the moon, to pray to the moon for transcendental help. And suddenly I was surrounded by not just hummingbirds, 3 hummingbirds individually came and hovered in front of me. And of course, we know that they're a great totem in Native America for bringing sweetness, bringing love. So watch a hummingbird. Wow, this is really exciting. How do you personally raise your vibration?
Great question, because we all go through ups and downs, right? Knowing when to rest. Music, moving my body. Again, going on my walks is probably one of the best ways to do it. And I do it as a daily practice, actually. Going consciously, connecting and seeing beauty in all. So this will be one of the ways. But having my dog also does it, hugging, loving your pets. If you have loved ones around you, expressing love is so important. My dad always said to me that saying I love you, it's not like having a savings account in the bank. You're not there to save it. We're here to express it every day. And for me, I know that sharing and expressing love to the people in my life brings me joy and raises my vibration. So yes.
Wow. And so those of you who are not necessarily feeling the quality of integrity that we see ELENA expressing, that it is potentially within your field. And so look at the field of wonder and the field of awe in your life. It's always there. It will always be, even in a moment of suffering. One of the most extraordinary things that I experienced, this is me going into a long story, but of actually meeting Mother Teresa with Princess Diana. And we were both so affected by what we saw in the hospice in Calcutta that I said to Mother Teresa, I feel that I want to do something right now for you. And she looked at me austerely and said, are you sure? And I said, yes. So she picked up a bucket and gave me the bucket and said, go and wash those bodies. And it was a ward full of people dying of dysentery. Which, of course, as we both know, as we all know, is a water deficiency disease. And so I went and I washed people's bodies. And someone died in front of me. But, as I washed their bodies, because there's no way of retaining water in one's body when one is in the grip of the disease, I would see these extraordinary faces looking at me saying, namaste, namaste. Even in the greatest darkness, as they were losing the substance of life as we know it in this conscious form, they were actually already making the trajectory and the transcendence into something which was infinitely more divine than what they were experiencing, although we could argue that disease is also part of the divine countenance. This has been a remarkable conversation. Absolutely. I'm just so excited. And I want us all to wish ELENA a very, very happy bon voyage, because she's leaving tomorrow for a pilgrimage into sacred Egypt, which is absolutely wonderful and right at the core of my heart. So please, say namaste, namaste to ELENA as she goes on her journey, but also for this very remarkable gift that you've given us. How do we contact you?
Yes, contact me through my website, holistic.com, WHOLISTIC.
Ryan's put it
so
up on the
much.
screen, so scribble it down. You will always have an access to the recording of this through my YouTube channel. So please, go, and it's a beautiful, beautiful website. So you will feel just by touching the website that you're in touch with ELENA automatically, and you'll feel the vibration moving through it. It's absolutely exquisite. Once again, from my heart and the deeper part of my soul, I want to say thank you to you. You're a very remarkable witness of this extraordinary work that you're doing. And for all of you tuning in, don't forget there'll be another deep dialogue at 8:30 GMT, 4:30 EDT, is that right? And on the Pacific Coastline, of course, it will be at 1:30 next Monday. I won't tell you who's coming, but somebody equally extraordinary who is a medical intuitive. Namaste, namaste. Please stay where you are, ELENA, and I'll come to you in a second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you so much.